What's up guys, and welcome to today's video. It's been a while since I've done a good old-fashioned training video, so I'm bringing you one today. I'm going to be discussing some of the main mistakes which I made when I started training, and even throughout my 20s I continued to make them. Starting in no particular order, let's go number one. So one of the first mistakes I made, I didn't rotate through the exercises which I was doing. I just stuck to a select few and just kept doing them over and over and over again. Now this isn't always a bad thing, but if you are sometimes doing the same exercises repeatedly, going through the same movement, using the same grip, you can actually start to cause injury and irritation, particularly in the shoulders and the elbows. For example, I always used to do pull-ups all the time, wide grip pull-ups, and eventually, after doing them so often, and obviously using your body weight, which is pretty heavy, it was causing havoc on my elbows. I combined this also with doing straight bar barbell curls repeatedly, very heavy weight, which, to be honest, when you're holding a straight bar in this position, it's not very natural. Combining both together again and again and again, my elbows were absolutely shattered, and I had to actually take some time off doing some curling exercises because it was that painful. So instead of doing wide grip pull-ups with a pronated grip all the time, I changed it. Sometimes I did underhand grip, sometimes I did a neutral grip. Neutral grip for me feels the most comfortable. And then I just would go through periods of time where I wouldn't do any pull-ups. I'd just do some machine pull-down variations as well. Same thing with the biceps. Instead of just doing barbell straight bar curling, I'd vary it up. I'd use an EZ bar, I'd use single arm dumbbell curl, I'd use a pronated grip, supinated grip, and neutral grip. All those combined help to ease my elbow pain. The next mistake I always used to make was I was always so focused on just lifting as heavy as possible and not concentrating on how I was moving the weight from point A to B. Okay, so which muscle I was primarily trying to target. I was literally just trying to focus on moving the weight. So now, and especially recently in my late 20s, early 30s, I'm so focused on literally only relying upon one muscle group to do the majority of the work. So say for example, any kind of squat or a hack squat. Usually I'll just get on the machine, I'll be like, right, let's just load it up, move the weight up and down until I've hit my target rep range. Now I'm thinking about, okay, well, do I want to hit my glutes with this one? Do I want to hit more hamstrings or my quads? And a lot of that is determined by not only mental focus and having so much control over the muscle which you're going to be using, but also just little things like foot positioning. So even just bringing your feet a little bit closer together, a little bit further down on the platform, maybe adjusting the angle of the platform based upon what your ankle mobility is like. Another textbook example, anytime I was doing a rowing movement, I was always focused on just bringing the weight towards me and loading it up as heavy as I possibly could do. But what happened? Over-engaging the bicep, hadn't taught myself how to engage the lat, and guess what? My lats never grew. Next mistake I always made, looking at my phone far too much, particularly in my later 20s when social media kind of blew up. I got into this horrible little habit of constantly checking my phone and my Instagram in between the sets. And what I noticed when I got into a habit of doing this, first of all, I was just massively distracted, because when I would go into the next working set, I'd just be thinking about what I'd just seen on my phone or who was messaging me, or mentally even preparing what message I would say back to them in response. But I also found that I enjoyed my sessions less. I don't know why, but just constantly looking at my phone, getting these hits of dopamine made me just not enjoy the session as much as I used to. So now when I go to the gym, I put my phone on airplane mode, or I'm just like a lot more disciplined with myself and I don't look at my phone. Once I've done my set, I keep myself in the zone, I reflect upon that set, how did I do, was it as good as it could be, prepare myself mentally for the next set, and before you know it, 60 seconds, 90 seconds later, it's time to go again. You don't have time to check your phone realistically, so if you want a more effective, more focused workout, don't look at your phone. Next mistake I made, I guess it wasn't really a mistake, but if I'd gone back, I probably would not have done it in the first place, and that is attempting to do far too many 1 rep maxes. And it was usually the case when I was training with some big guys. I was just letting my ego get in the way and trying to keep up with them. And the majority of the time, I've attempted to do a 1 rep max, particularly with compound movements, whether it be bench press, squat, deadlift. I almost always injured myself. Shoulder problems, lower back problems, every time because of the 1 rep maxes. So I don't bother doing it anymore. Yeah, sometimes it's nice to know what I could potentially lift for 1 rep, but is it worth the injury? Absolutely not. I'd much prefer to not know and just continue to go to the gym injury-free. So the majority of you guys, particularly if you're in your 20s, I wouldn't bother. Unless you're a power lifter or you've really got your form on point, your technique is on point, and you can, realistically go for it, I just wouldn't bother, right? It's a waste of time, and you're more than likely going to injure yourself. Another mistake I used to make, I used to train to failure way too often. I would approach every single set for every exercise I did and push myself to complete failure. The problem with this is I would just end up in a state of being overtrained. I would just fatigue myself far too often, and then I just wondered why I felt like absolute turd constantly. So I was pushing myself too much. And it's not necessary to actually build muscle and to grow. Particularly if you're a beginner, you should not be pushing to failure. There's no need to. You don't need to grow. If you have taken a bit of time off, maybe you've had a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks off training, again, you don't need to be pushing to failure when you come back into the gym. When you become more advanced of a lifter, you've been training consistently for 6 months, a year, whatever it might be, then you can start pushing yourself to that point of failure. But you don't need to do it for every single set. A good approach, which I follow now for me, and I am an advanced trainer, for the first set, the second set, I keep a little bit in the tank. So maybe I hold off for failure, 1 or 2 reps. And then the last set, I go with that all out, 100% intensity and good push to failure. The next mistake I made, not warming up appropriately before my sessions. I remember in my early 20s, mid 20s, I used to walk into the gym feeling invincible and literally go straight into my working set weight for the first exercise. Guess what happened? I got myself injured. So now, particularly as I am in my early 30s, I'm only getting older, the priority to warm up adequately before a session is absolutely essential, particularly when it comes to doing some heavy pressing, heavy rowing movements or leg day. I spend at least 5 minutes just warming myself up, doing some dynamic stretches, and even on the first exercise, I'll do a couple of warm-up sets, a couple reps, short rest in between, just to prepare my muscles and my joints for what is about to come. So do not neglect the warm-ups before your training sessions. So I would say for a good 5 years, particularly the first 5 years of training, I was following a bro split. So I was just doing 1 muscle group per session. Now obviously I saw results from doing this, but was it optimal? Most likely not. Especially with some of my weaker muscle groups, only training it once per week, it was just not enough stimulus to allow it to grow as much as it possibly could do. Say for example, if I was to compare it, if I was to hit that muscle group twice per week. So now, when I approach all my training sessions, the majority of the time, I'm hitting at least 2 to 3 muscle groups in each session. And the majority of the time, I'm hitting each muscle group at least twice per week. For my stronger muscle groups, I'll only hit it like once per week because I simply don't need to apply any more volume to it. It's just unnecessary. Whereas the lagging muscle groups, if I hit them more frequently, usually I'll always see more growth. And the last one, I used to train far too frequently. I remember back in my mid-20s when I had my own studio, I was just going to the gym every single day. Sometimes 7 days a week, sometimes 2 weeks in a row. I would barely have any rest days, but I just thought that more was better. And now I look back, in hindsight, I was obviously wrong. I would wonder why I was struggling to achieve a pump, why there was no vascularity, why my strength was going down, why I just wasn't motivated to train, and why even I was starting to get flu-like symptoms. I was just overtraining. So now I place a lot more emphasis on my rest and recovery days. These are the days when your body recharges and you're actually building a lot of new muscle tissue, so you can't neglect them. And a lot of you guys, even if you're in your early 20s, you got loads of energy, just have those days off, have those days to rest and recover. Maybe do some stretching, maybe do some light cardio, a little bit of core work, whatever it might be. But quality over quantity always. When you go to your session, push hard, train effectively, train intense, and you really need to do that 4 or 5 times a week to actually see the results which you want to achieve. Okay, so keep that in mind. So there we have it, folks. Some of the biggest mistakes which I made in my earlier years of training and even throughout my 20s. Now I've learned from them. I'm training appropriately, sensibly. I'm injury-free, no niggles, no pains. Everything is good. I'm enjoying life and I'm looking good. So hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you check out the Thirst app if you are in need of any training programming to maximize hypertrophy and optimize body composition. Don't forget to subscribe to this video and I'll see you in the next one.